Welcome to Cosmic Roadmap. I'm your host, Melissa Lambor, Reiki astrogeo guide and author. I support endless wanderers with where they are meant to be in the world. This podcast is for the digital nomad, the avid traveler, and aspiring globetrotter who is seeking their next destination on planet Earth. Join us as we venture around the world through people's stories and how astrogeography has connected them to their planetary energies and purpose. My special guest today is Kiana Davis. She is the founder and owner of Tutor Kids and More LLC, a private tutoring and childcare business. She is a New Jersey certified teacher for grades kindergarten through 6th grade, providing private instruction to students in pre-K through 7th grade. She has worked as an educator throughout Morris County for more than 14 years. Her goal is to help children train their brain to be confident in their ability to do anything they set their mind to and have fun while they learn. So we met through mutual friends, Natalie Lowry and Gabby Braddock of No Plan B Consulting. And we've been in various business networks such as NGN, Recent Storytelling, Mentorship with Chris Ward Jr., and it's been amazing because the first time I met you, I wanted to do an astrogeo session with you. I knew that you worked with particular clients from Turkey, and I just wanted to see what that connection was. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here, and just thank you for holding space for me to talk more about my story. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And how has your life been since your astrogeo session? We did it back at a psychic fair that I did back in October. Have you seen any cosmic connections during your travels or just in life in general?
So I did actually go on a trip to Colorado after our session, and it was very enlightening and very grounding. I hadn't been there before, and I was visiting a friend, and it was just so surreal being in nature and just feeling even more connected than I could ever possibly feel to the earth there than I could here. So I would love to go back. And before our session, I had gone to Florida, and that was another just aligning trip. But yeah, I'm looking forward to exploring more of the places that we discussed.
Yeah, because I know Florida was your moon energy, so you probably felt at home there.
Yes.
And you've been called there for quite a while. How did you feel on your moon energy?
I literally fell asleep on the beach under the moon. Like, that was one of the most monumental moments on the trip, because I was in a completely new place. I was by myself, and I literally felt so safe. I felt so watched over. It's so funny. So when I told my mom that same night that I had fallen asleep on the beach, she was like, "You can't do that."
I freaking out. Yeah.
And I'm like
coming from Jersey, it's like, you don't do that.
Literally. And I was like, I didn't mean to, but I literally felt so comfortable. And like you said, so at home. And I was there visiting a family friend, but I was there spending a lot of time by myself and just being one with going wherever I felt like I wanted to go, listening to my intuition. I met a really cool, I'm going to call him my shaman just because there's no other real word for him, or a guide, whatever. And it was just such a enlightening and spiritual time for me. And I got a lot of signs from the universe. That's exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was doing, and just stepping into an era of exploring the world more.
What were the other signs that you were getting? Because I know you see angel numbers and
all the time. All the time. There's still to get into that. This particular trip, there was a lot. I saw blue jays every morning. So that's definitely one of my spirit animal totems. Blue jays every morning. On my last morning there, I had breakfast underneath a nest of bluebirds.
Wow.
So that I literally cried at breakfast. It's like emotional. And the man that I met, actually, he bought me one of my most used spiritual tools, a black amethyst crystal. And he just said that he felt called to help me, and was like, something in here is for you, and I'm here to give it to you and be a vessel for your growth. And was just telling me so many things about me that he could have never have known, but was just like, you're going to be able to help people and see what they need without having to talk to them or really even understand their backstory. You're just going to be able to listen to them and see them and know what they need. And he was a mental health care provider as well. And when I told him that I was going in that profession, he was like, yeah, I do the same thing. And he had been working with kids for a long time. And I was like, so do I. So it was just so by chance how we met too. It was like only because I was there at that time. And so was he. It was
Like
just so
divine
divine.
alignment. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that particular day I met him was actually 555. So it was, yeah, it was May 23rd, 2021. And I was like, okay. And then after meeting him, ran into the same man 4 different times. And one of those times was at 5:55 p.m. It was just one of those moments where, and I have him so much more now, where I just feel so washed over and so surrounded by people, spirits, things that are just there for me and just rooting for me to just keep doing everything that I'm doing.
And not pushing, because I feel like
Yeah.
we tend to push, especially in entrepreneurship, where I want to go down this path, but maybe we're not catering to the ideal client or whatever it may be, or the messaging. So I love that you went with the flow, and the fact that you were in that moon energy, it allowed you to just receive the downloads and receive the healing that you needed. So Colorado, what was that trip about? I know you're like, oh, so much, but you had Jupiter energy there. So that was about abundance and just ease and just receiving like the abundance that's on this earth.
Yes. And it's so funny because that's literally what it felt like. We were just in the mountains. I was just taking it all in. I was thinking about, oh, I could have a house here. I was like, the hiking, the nature, the mountains alone there are just magical. It's just a whole different space. And I just felt, again, so part of the world. And while I was there, I was visiting a friend, like I said, and we were just talking about our businesses and talking about like the goals that we had and how at the time I was actually financially struggling a lot. And I was nervous that trip was going to be like, not that I couldn't do anything, but it was funny because I didn't think I was going to get paid until after the trip. And I actually got paid the second day I was there. And I felt, oh, what are the chances that I'm here? And I'm like, oh, thinking I'm not going to be able to afford it, but I can. And it was like, it came to me, and her boyfriend at the time were like super nice and treated me to dinner and just made me feel at home. We could talk about it all day, but it was definitely a necessary trip. It just felt like I would definitely go back again. I didn't feel like I was there long enough. I just wanted to explore more of like the town, like Denver too, and the mountains, and actually spend an entire day in the forest. That's like what I wanted to do. We didn't have time to do it, but that's what I wanted to do, was just sit somewhere on a rock and just like chill.
And it makes complete sense. The fact that your paycheck or the salary that you're waiting for just arrived when you're in that Jupiter energy. Like financial, like love, business, it just, everything comes very easily. Yeah, definitely make a visit there or meditate on the energy that you kind of harness there. Yeah. And how have these connections helped you coming back to New Jersey? Have you been able to harness the energy from these places when you think back to Florida or think back to Colorado? Like, how have you been incorporating that energy back into your life and business?
Into my life and business, the duality of the two, just knowing when I need a vacation and those trips and like listening to my intuition. Because I mean, the Florida trip, I really wasn't even sure I was going to go. And even how I planned the trip was divine. It was like I was sitting at work and I thought to myself, I said, you want to take a vacation, but the only person stopping you is you. And I was like, the only thing you need to do right now is book your flight and book your Airbnb, and everything else will figure itself out. And that's exactly what happened. I booked my flight. I reached out to a family friend. She gave me a list of Airbnbs to choose from. One of them was 15 minutes from her. She took me to the grocery store when I got there. I was right on the strip in the Gulf port of Florida, and it just worked out. And then Colorado too, like I just said, getting paid and the things being affordable there and not feeling like I had to spend a lot of money. I was just immersed in the abundance of being there. And I'm feeling like I'm pulling that energy into my space now because I allow myself to think about trips in a less rigid way. And I think about it as a way for me to recharge and a way to reboot myself and a way to like not think about work or school and to just be Kiana without all those different I don't want to call them labels, but hats that I wear, and
Yeah.
just being me and exploring the world as just me. And I didn't realize how therapeutic it would be until I did it. So yeah, for
Right.
sure.
No, and definitely, and it opens your eyes to the different places that you can go to, that you're not stuck.
Yes.
And yeah, that different places have different energies, and depending on what your goal is,
Mm.
that's beautiful. So yeah, tell people a little bit about what your business is. You are a teacher, but at the same time you have this, blossoming business in
Yes.
tutoring and also childcare. Go a
Yes.
little bit into that, how you went from teaching and into your business, or was that a simultaneous thing? Which one started?
Which one started?
Yeah.
Actually, it's interesting because so I started tutoring when I was in college, going to school to be a teacher.
Yeah.
But that was literally just one of my 3 jobs that I was doing at the time, on top of full-time school and then full-time, what else was I doing? Full-time classes. And then I was also working full-time on campus as a student worker. So I was working in the dean of students office, the computer lab, and tutoring outside of school. And I literally was getting paid $20 an hour to sit with a couple of Turkish children and help them with their homework. And it was one of the best experiences, but it also was super stressful. Like, the communication and the different ways of like me getting paid was a headache sometimes. Like, I literally used to have to leave campus to go to the lady's house and pick up my check underneath their doormat, and like set appointment times to go pick up my money. It was just so many different things that I don't think back about too often. But now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, wow, like you went through the turmoil of figuring out how you wanted to run your business even before you knew you're going to start it. And then when I finished school, I started substitute teaching, and then I was adamant about growing my business, so much so that I was leaving my business cards with every teacher that I sub for. I would leave them with principals or secretaries, and I just put it out in the universe, and I journaled about it. Yeah, the whole nine. I'm going to be an instructional para somewhere. I'm going to get a full-time job so that I can have a steady income and not rely on my family, because a big part of me starting my business was going against the grain in my family, to where they didn't think I was going to be able to live off of the business. And I had to be the sole believer and say, yeah, it might not happen right now, but it will happen as long as
Right.
I believe it will. And it still hasn't happened. It's been almost 5 years, but I see it. It's so tangible at this
Mhm.
point, just knowing how much I've used my craft in the private instruction sector and in the public school arena. It's just been a really amazing opportunity to practice my craft in so many different ways. I've worked at tutoring centers, I've worked at summer camps, I've done all of that. So they kind of flowed together when they were supposed to. I don't think either one
Yeah.
started before the other.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
just been this beautiful journey, just like weaving in and
Yeah.
out with the learning the instruction and also the tutoring. How has it been with your family? Because I feel like
Mm.
most of us, our family looks at our businesses like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
Is it, yeah, that little side hustle? Like, how have you been able to come out of that and be like, no, like I have a vision and I'm gonna get there.
Short answer, I stopped trying to convince them of it.
Yeah.
Like, I just do it because I know they're never gonna really, well, I shouldn't say never, but they currently aren't able to respect it to the degree that I feel like they should. And I think that it's also because my uncle also has his own business, and his business supports his family. And
Mm.
they look at me like, she works and she has her business, and they'll ask me about how it is, but I don't think that they are able to see the vision that I have for it and how big it will get. Yeah, no, I just stopped caring as much. I just do what I
You just
need to.
keep
They know that
going.
I'm busy. Yeah, they know that
Yeah.
I'm busy. They know that I'm usually tutoring or working on my grad school work, or they know that I have my hands in a lot of different things and that I'm doing what I want to do. So yeah, that's enough for me right now. When
Yeah.
they're meant to believe it or respect it or see, it'll all come.
No, exactly. And I feel the same way too, where my mom will ask me like silly questions. Do you do tarot readings? Because for her, that's like a no in the Catholic Church. Even if it was tarot readings, it's okay. But she doesn't clearly understand what I'm doing, because I can mention astrology and the locational astrology and
Right.
astrogeography, but it's, yeah, we do like very abstract things when it is online or it's not going into a 9 to 5 or going into a school. Yeah, we just have to keep on going. So
Yeah.
you did mention that your first clients were from Turkey and you still
Yes.
continue to work with many clients from Turkey. And when we did
Mm,
your reading, your moon node is there, and your moon node is all about your purpose in life.
yeah.
So how has working with these clients like solidified like what you do?
Mhm.
And there's also Pluto energy in the Turkey area. So that's all about transformation and rebirth. So almost putting you through the ropes or the ringer at the beginning, right?
Literally, yes.
With the check that you were talking about. So I feel like
Yeah.
it's really pushed you. So how has that?
It's funny because you put it in a very perfect way as far as like it pushing me and going through the ringer to get the reward and being okay with that uncertainty of how hard it might be or how the challenge might place me in my business or in my own like self-belief sometimes too. So yeah, that client like leaving school and then meeting my most recent Turkish family, we don't work with together anymore, but we worked together for wow, almost well, yeah, from the time of the pandemic until a couple months ago. So yeah, two plus years. And they were probably the most challenging clients I think I've ever had because initially when the mother reached out to me, she didn't speak any English. Her Instagram was very like blank. I literally thought she might have been a serial killer. I was like, who is this woman? Broken English. I didn't know what to expect. And when she gave me her address, I looked it up. I was like, oh, it's actually close to where I was currently living. So I felt a little bit better about it. And when I learned more about what she needed, her son, who was 6 at the time, I believe, yeah, he was going into school, but it was during the pandemic and wasn't getting the help that he needed and wasn't able to read or write in English. And they were talking about holding him back. And when I initially thought about the job, I wasn't sure if I could do it because I was like, am I really gonna not only work with a child who is from a foreign country, who doesn't speak my language. I've never had to teach English to a student before. Most of my students were from here and were acclimated to the American culture, however you want to call it. And I can still remember the moment that I decided to take on the job. And I was like, no, like you have to take on this challenge because if you don't, then you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. If you can't teach this kid and get him to where he needs to be, then you have no business having this business at all. And that was like a kick in my ass to be like, okay, figure it out. And I met with him 3 times a week for months on end. Eventually, he did place out of ESL and no longer had to be in the program and was reading above grade level by the time that I finished working with him. And outside of that triumph, they were the most challenging, obviously, because of the language barrier. And she needed her older kids to translate for her. And I was using Google Translate a lot. And even like in the midst of being a part of like her being a part of my business, I realized there are a lot of things that I let slide or like let go under the rug because I didn't want to cause rifts or I didn't want to make it more difficult for her. And then in the end, she showed herself to not really appreciate what I was doing. And it made me realize that if I had set the standards sooner and didn't try and like, you know, I don't know what the word is, but I allowed myself to let her dictate how I was going to run my business when it should have been the other way around. But I don't regret it because I got to help this boy be so confident and he looked forward to making me proud and would come into the session someday and be like, I'm going to make you cry today. And that was like a reward to him. It was like, because I did. There were some days that I definitely teared up because I just didn't, it was amazing watching him from where he started to where he was and as he grew, and it was just amazing to see. But yeah, just knowing how our relationship ended, because I think that for people listening, you can start a relationship with somebody and have the best intentions and then it ends in such a polarized way than how you would ever envision, to where we were talking about working with both of her sons. I was working with the younger one and then she was like, I want to work with the older son, and he needed the help. And I was letting her know like the frequency that it needed to be. And I was finally having her sign the contract that everybody else in my business had already signed for months.
Yeah.
It was like just, catching her on to things.
Right.
And gave her the contract. She said that she was going to read it over with her husband and sign it and they're going to keep going. And I haven't heard from her since. And
Wow.
I was like, wow, like you would never think that someone that would bring fruit to me and make me tea and would buy me new things and like whenever they had a birthday, I would get a piece. Like it
Right.
was just, I was family in my mind. But then I realized that sense of family was great, but it wasn't great for my business. I shouldn't say that, because I do think of my business as a family, and the families that I work with, build relationships with, are my family. But I think that there's a boundary that I wasn't setting
Exactly.
sooner or as hard as I should have.
No,
And
and it
yeah,
allowed you to see what boundaries like you wanted to set
yeah,
from the beginning.
exactly.
And I think that's something that we constantly are evolving as we
Mm,
figure out how far do we go with our
right.
business, or like how far or what topics do we touch upon.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's so beautiful with the Pluto energy, because Plutonian energy, it's all about that rebirth and transformation. And
Yes.
and that was definitely for you. And the purpose, like you, I feel like you dove deeper into tutoring with your moon node being in that
Yes.
Turkish environment as well. You mentioned communication, language. So
Mhm.
you have also taken Spanish before, and Spain was another line that you had. You had lines through Spain, which
Mhm.
were also your moon node with your purpose line. And the
Yes.
other one is Mercury, which is all about communication. So since when
Yeah.
have you been called to Spain? Were you learning Spanish since you were young, in
Yes.
elementary and like middle school? Yeah.
Family members I had growing up spoke Spanish because they were married to a person who was from a Latin American country. And my godmother was actually, oh my gosh, I can't remember if she was Honduran or Colombian. She was one of those.
Mhm.
Sorry, Patty. Her name was Patty. And she would always take me to like the local moms and pops restaurants where they spoke fluent Spanish, and I would order my food in Spanish. She would teach me. And in school, definitely learned Spanish from, literally I've been learning Spanish since first grade. Yeah. So I had always had a love for the language. And when I went to college, I had started my Spanish minor and was doing really well. I'd still want to go back and finish. And that was my goal, was to have a minor in Spanish so that I would not only be able to get more jobs, but just be more equipped in the language to be able to speak it fluently. And it's funny because family members now are like, yeah, you do speak fluent Spanish. And I'm like, but I don't feel like I do, but I'm always practicing. And my love for Spain started very young too. It started with Barcelona, and then it was
Mm.
like learning about the entire country and being like, oh my goodness, I need to go there. Like that was my initial feeling. Like, I need to go there. I need to immerse myself in that culture. And
Yeah.
part of my ethnic background was supposedly Spaniard
Okay.
Spanish as well. So I was like, I don't know if that's even true. I want to do my DNA thing to figure out if
Yeah.
that's accurate. But I definitely felt a very strong spiritual connection to the language and the country, and just wanted to explore more of it.
Right, right. And it just makes sense with the moon node, the purpose line. Like there's definitely, it's opening up something related
Mhm.
to your business or your life, like what you're meant to do in this world. So maybe teaching in Spain one day, or who
I could see
knows?
that.
Yeah,
I
who
could
knows?
totally see that. My
Exactly.
plan was to go there and live there. Like that for
Right.
now in my life, I'm like, if I ever do, not if, when I do go, I will be staying there for an extended amount of time. And that's also why I feel like the traveling that I do and the longer that the trips end up being, I'm feeling more comfortable with being away. And
Hmm.
I know that Spain is so abroad, but I think that these smaller trips here, and still feeling like I'm super far from my home and my home base, it'll just give me that confidence to feel like you can go and just do your research and find your way wherever you go, because you're meant to be there, like you're saying. And
Yeah.
I've taught students in Spanish. I've been the backup translator at my school when the custodians aren't there, and the nurses, can you talk to a parent in Spanish? And I'm like, okay, like just getting able to
Yeah.
practice. In student teaching, it's so funny. The ESL teacher would call me and ask me what I was going to teach the ESL students that day. Like he would come in and be like, all right, what are we doing today? And I'm like, aren't you the ESL teacher? I'm just learning, but yeah, it definitely is a position that I'm supposed to step into more. So I'm looking
Right.
forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah, because you are already naturally being thrown into those roles.
Yes.
So that actually brings us to the future. Like, where do you
Hmm.
see yourself? What places, what energies do you see yourself connecting with? What countries? And do you see your business actually expanding to more virtual options?
Absolutely. I think that starting the way that my business started, and I literally only thought about it in my hometown. And since I lived with my family and I was just trying to cater to my local community where I went to school, I don't even think my vision was able to put me in different states or countries and things like that. And then over the past year or two, working with students that are out of state, it really did tell me like, you can be that person who's teaching kids overseas English, or your tutoring services don't have to just be in person in the location you are. You can have a whole lab full of people on the computer working with kids too. Like, it definitely has broadened my horizons as far as my perspective and where I think my business can go. So I definitely see me traveling more to explore more places, and looking in Spain and going, where else do I want to go? Definitely want to go to Turkey. Definitely want to go to Spain. Definitely want to
Mhm.
go to, I think Italy was one of the places too, or
I
that
think so.
area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of Europe. Yeah, you had good energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that I've always made a joke that I'm gonna marry a German man. Like, I've just said to myself that my person, man or female, is abroad somewhere, just living their best life. So I'll be joining them eventually. But yeah, definitely see myself and my business growing and being able to touch even more thousands of lives than it's already touched in the seemingly short amount of time. But 14 plus years is a lot of time. And I really have to remind myself, you've touched a lot of lives. So just want to keep doing that.
And that's amazing. And also, you're multifaceted. Like, you're in a master's program right now. You're
Yes.
branching out into mental health. And also, you sing, you write
Hmm.
poetry. So
Hmm.
tell people a little bit about your offerings. You have tutoring
Yeah.
offerings, but yeah, you're also this creative being.
So I'll talk about the creative side, and then I'll talk
Mhm.
about the offering. Like you said, I've been singing my whole life. I actually grew up in a family that appreciated music, and both my parents sang. I've been in a choir of some kind since I was 7 years old. Yeah, no, 6 or 7. Yeah. And it's just always been something that I love. I feel at home when I sang and when I'm able to be creative. One of my tools that I used to get better at my singing was my poetry book, even though it was labeled a song book. My dad gave me my first ever song/poetry book when I was about 8 years old, and I still have it. And some of my first original songs are written in there. And it's amazing how far I've come to recently performing one of my first original songs at the Red Talk event.
Yes.
And
Last
that was,
November.
yeah, November,
Mhm.
and right after our astrogeo session. It's
Yeah.
just so many things that have helped me to get closer to singing, as far as being in the studio more often. And I did, sing in my free time in college, and had organized some groups that, sang in front of people, and had sing in talent shows, and just all these different things. I am currently working on an EP. A single of mine will be out very soon. I'm actually picking a release date actually tomorrow. I'll be working on the song and picking a release date, which will be sometime in May for sure. So I'm looking forward to
Amazing.
that. And the EP is, I've already been working on it. I actually started working on it in November, December. And it's been a process, and just realizing all the investments that are needed has also helped me to grow and realize how, if I really want to get to a place where these things are a part of who I am, and they are being fed and being nourished the way they're supposed to, it's going to take even more of me really being true to who I am and what my purpose is, so that I can just invite more abundance, and so I'm able to carry out all of that is. And the poetry is another thing, just because it coincides so much with music and with writing songs. And a lot of my poems have become songs, or songs have become whatever, vice versa. And deciding to start my poetry book last fall as well. Wow, a lot of things were started last fall. I didn't even think about that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I started my poetry book, and that's been underway for a while, and it still is. I have no idea when it's going to be out, but when it is, it's going to be so special. And I'm really looking forward to sharing that with the world. And I've already had a publisher read it, and her first advice was, I want to know more about you. I love the poetry, but I want to know more of your story. And I was
Right.
like, wow, always wanted to write a memoir, but never thought that the poetry would be the doorway into writing more about me by using something that really does light me up,
Right,
So
right. Yeah,
looking
because
forward to that.
poetry can be quite cryptic, where you don't
Hmm.
really understand like what's going on. So yeah, that would be amazing
Right.
to have a follow-up memoir. And how can people work with you? How can they find this EP that's coming out?
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. So well, it's also because I have two different pages. So my
Mhm.
Kiana Mariah XO is my song music, songwriting artist page on Instagram. And then Tutor Kids and More, they can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and tutorkidsandmore.com. Just to plug in the offerings, currently I have a digital workbook. It's called The Keys to Great Reading, Writing, and Math Habits Workbook. And it's for children from grades 1st through 7th. And it's just a really great template on how to teach kids to make the habits that will keep them successful in school part of their muscle memory, and something that they don't necessarily have to think about. They'll be able to just tap into it because they've been practicing and getting those reminders. And there's also work pages where they can work on reading comprehension and defining words they don't know. And it's just a really great template that you can use multiple times. And it'll just help your child to be able to feel more confident in doing the things they need to do, so that their teacher and you are like, yeah, you remember to stop at periods or reread the questions so you understand it, all those things. And yeah, the single, like I said, will be out. That'll be promoted on the Kiana Mariah XO page. I'm also taking on clients for the summer. My schedule will be opening up starting about halfway towards the end of June. So I'll be having more time to cater to my clients. So I'm looking forward to adding on some new students that I can help get ready for next school year.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on. Definitely follow Kiana in all her multifaceted endeavors. So remember, lineage goes beyond your ancestors. You are meant to connect to the cosmos so you may finally find your cosmic family. Until next time. Thank you for listening to Cosmic Roadmap. If you're curious about astrogeography and where you're meant to be on the planet, go to cosmicroadmap.com to download your free passport to purpose. You can also book a session with me where we can explore your own cosmic roadmap and chart your next destination in business, love, and life.